Thank you for joining. We'll begin with the Pranam Mantra. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Paramahayate Yat Kripatam Mahamande Shri Gurundima Karanam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Savadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitanscha नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वतीति नामिने श्रीवर्षभानुवि देवी दयिताय कृपाब्धये कृष्णसम्बन्ध विज्ञानदायिने प्रभवे नमः माधुर्यज्वल प्रेमाद्य श्रीरूपानुग भक्तिदास श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति विग्रहाय नमस्तते नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुग विरुद्धापाप सिद्धांत द्वंद्वहारिणे नमो गौर किशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये प्रलम्बर सांबोधे प्रदाम्बोजायते नमः नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानंद नामिने गौर शक्ति स्वरूपाय रूपानुगवरायते गौरवीर्भाव भूमिस्तुं दिव्यश्च सज्जन प्रिया विष्णव सर्वभौमा श्री श्री जगन्नाथाय ते नमः वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम पदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरत्वसे नमः पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपासुरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमस्तुते जयतं सुरतोपाङ्गो मम मन्दे मते गति मत्सर्वस्य पदाम्बुजो श्रीराधा मदन मोहनो दिव्याद्वृन्दारण्य कल्पद्रुमादः श्रीमद्रत्नाकर सिंहासनस्थितौ श्रीमद् राधा शील गोविंद देवो पृष्ठाली सेवमानौ स्मरामि श्रीमन्वासरसारम्भी वंशी भट्ट प्रस्थिता प्रसन्नेन सुमे गोपीश गोपीनाथाय श्रीयस्तु नः तप्त कंचन गौरंगे राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवण कीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति श्रुहत्सतां नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी हरे कृष्णा and thank you all for joining. We are continuing our discussion on Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse 30 onwards. So in the previous section or in the current section, what we are studying right now, we are discussing from verse 22 to 32 about the Krama Mukti or gradual liberation of the yogi. So this yogi is a Virat Rupa meditator. So Krama Mukti once. You open the So there are two paths, as we discussed earlier. There are two paths. One is a gradual path for the attached yogi, as well as one was a path which was for the detached yogi. So the dharana shraya for that detached yogi is Paramatma, and then he focuses on dhyana, samadhi, and then he takes this particular path, and then he attains Brahman realization, and then following the Sat Chakra Yoga, then he finally attains liberation. However, somebody who is attached yogi takes the different path because he still has desire, and all his desire is in his subtle body. So he takes a different path, and that path is Krama Mukti. That's what we are discussing currently. So, Snehavalli Mataji, she would give a summary of what we discussed in the last session. So I will pass it over to her if she is ready.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna everyone. And let me share so that we can प्रभु आपको मेरा स्क्रीन नजर आ रहा है?
One second. I think I thought it. Okay, so I think the transition is correct now. Yes.
आपको ये वैदिक कॉस्मोलॉजी में नजर आ रहा है? ये वाला आपका PDF डॉक्यूमेंट?
Yes, and I want to make sure it is streamed in the YouTube. Sure. Yes. Okay, Aditi, go ahead.
Yes, okay. So we discussed from verse 23 to 29. And in verse 23, this verse compares between transcendentalist and fruitive workers. So the verse says the transcendentalist can move unrestricted within and beyond material worlds. They have spiritual bodies and they do not have material bodies. And comparison to the fruitive workers, here Prabhupada says that these are either the gross materialist or the fruitive workers. They can never move in such an unrestricted manner. Verse number 24 talks about the journey of a mystic. That this mystic or a transcendentalist, it's the same thing, same word is being used, that how this transcendentalist travels through the universe. So, such a mystic first passes from the different levels are given. So, the first he passes from the planet of fire, then he goes to the Shishumara, pole star, and we will talk about these places, and then he goes to Brahmaloka. In a planet of fire, he gets free from all the contaminations. In Shishumara or pole star, the mystic relates to Lord Hari, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu is present is there. Kshirodaksha Vishnu is present. And then he goes to Brahmaloka. So now if you look at the screen, we talked about the Vedic cosmology. And in this is the Bhumandala. This blue item is where our earth is. This the centerpiece. Prabhu, आपको मेरा कर्सर नजर आ रहा है ना?
Yes.
Okay. So this centerpiece is the Mount Sumeru, and this whole part is the nakshatra, and this Dhruvaloka is the pole star is on the top, and all these planets are connected to Dhruvaloka, and they move according to Dhruvaloka. These are called nakshatras. These are called nakshatras, and these strands of airs are called pravaha. And sun and moon are also here. Above Dhruvaloka is these other loka like Maharloka, Janloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka. So the transcendentalist from the planet Earth, he moves first to the planet of fire, which maybe I'll ask Amitananda Prabhu to tell me because I don't know where that planet is. And he gets free from contamination. Then he goes to Dhruvaloka. This is Dhruvaloka, the pole star. And from pole star, he goes above to next verse. We'll talk about Maharloka. But with this, the further verses will talk about how he moves from Dhruvaloka to these higher planets up till Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka or Satyaloka is the same thing. And then in verse number 25. Verse number 25. Give me 1 second. Yes. So, Shishumara The verse 25 says, Shishumara is the pivot for turning of the universe. Yogi alone goes beyond Shishumara and attains the planet Maharloka. In Maharloka, the lifespan is 4,300,000,000 solar years. And this planet is worshipable for those who are transcendently situated. And look at the words which Prabhupada is using. Sometimes it is mystic, yogi, and sometimes it is devotee. Now, right now, Prabhupada is saying yogi because it is still within the material universe. And the moment we will talk about going beyond the material universe, Prabhupada changes the words from yogi to devotee. I really like that. So let's go to verse number 26. In summary, for verse 26, it says that the end of Brahma's life, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta. And here is Ananta, and this is from where the fire comes up, and all the planets are kind of destroyed. Only top planets are not destroyed. So from the Maharloka, when these flames come out from the Maharloka, the yogi leaves Maharloka in airplanes towards Satyaloka. The duration of life in Satyaloka is 15,480,000,000,000 solar years. In the purport, Prabhupada specifically talks about, because it is telling us about the lifespan of these planets and also about the planes that which airplanes they use. So Prabhupada definitely stresses in the purport here that common men must accept the Vedic way of understanding the scriptures, such as Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Vedic way is more authentic as it has been accepted by the acharyas who are faithful, learned, and without any flaws of the conditioned souls. The acharyas are the liberated souls. So Prabhupada definitely stresses that we need to accept the knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is verse number 26. Now verse number 27. Description of Satyaloka. This is Satyaloka right here. There is no old age, no death, no anxiety, no bereavement, which is no lamentation. There is a feeling of compassion for the conditioned souls who are unaware of the process of devotional service and are going through the miseries in the material world. So they do feel compassion towards those souls. Then Prabhupada emphasizes that there is no happiness in this material world. Happiness is a myth, and foolish people make plan to be happy in this material world. Intelligent men make plan to go back to Godhead. Such intelligent men sympathizes with suffering materialistic men, and he preaches them the necessity of going back to Godhead. Then is verse number 28. Okay. From 28 verse, from Satyaloka, now Prabhupada uses the word devotee. Before that, it is yogi or a transcendentalist. So from Satyaloka, it can be a transcendentalist because the one who are Brahmavadi, they can cross these coverings and go to the spiritual world. After these coverings, after these thick coverings, then there is a Brahmajyoti where all the Vaikuntha planets are located. So in verse number 28, Prabhupada says, from Satyaloka, a devotee gradually attains to the ethereal stage by going to the different coverings of the universe, like from earthly to watery to fiery to glowy and to airy. Ultimately, he enters one of the Vaikuntha planets where he attains the form the same as the Lord and engage in Lord's transcendental service. Because nobody can go to the Vaikuntha planets until they are doing any service to the Lord. The main thing is devotional service. If that is absent, nobody is going to the Vaikuntha planet. So in the purport, the Prabhupada talks about these different layers in verse number 28, that the first layer is 80 million miles, and each layer is 10 times more greater than the previous layer. So from Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, there are three ways of going out. Either the person stays, there the word the yogis, the person stays within this material world based upon their pious activities, or they can cross the coverings and go to the spiritual world. And third is they can either attain liberation along with Lord Brahma when the planet gets, when the whole material universe gets destroyed. So then in verse 29, the verse is the devotee surpasses. Now the Prabhupada is again using the word devotee. The devotee surpasses the subtle objects of different senses and the sense organs by material activities. Purport says that devotee or a yogi becomes completely cleansed of all material contamination to become eligible for entrance into the kingdom of God by liquidation of the gross and the subtle causes. So that means that only when we stop having or engaging in sense gratification with the gross and subtle causes, then only we will cross this. So in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna said many times that one needs to control their senses. So that is what this verse number 29 is talking about. So I think this is it. And then I wanted to discuss one more thing, the Shishumara thing here. Yes, so this is the nakshatra. I have heard it, but I am not remembering it completely. Prabhupada gave this Shishumara as the shape of dolphin, but in Sri Vaishnavas, it is not dolphin, it is something else. I could be wrong, I'm just faintly remember maybe a scorpion or something, but Prabhupada translated the Shishumara as a dolphin, and this is where the pole star is, and all the planets are connected through Pravaha. Those are the strands of air. So this is what I wanted to present as a summary, and I think I'm done, and back to Amritananda Prabhu. And thank you, Amritananda Prabhu, for this opportunity. Now I am understanding more that how much time you invest in preparing all these things. And I read these verses many times to prepare just this small summary. It takes a lot of effort. So thank you for doing that. And I would like to do the summary again. So please keep me in a loop, and anytime you want, maybe every 3-4 weeks, whenever you want, I will be more than happy to do the summary. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you for the wonderful summary. So let's go back. Actually, I am learning more while preparing these things. It's a good practice for me that it gives me the opportunity to focus my attention on Srimad Bhagavatam. When we studied at that time, we had a certain level of understanding, but as soon as you start teaching, then it becomes a different, because now devotees are maybe asking questions and we have to answer, so we have to be prepared more. So coming back to
a lot of effort. Yes, so Prabhu, where is that planet of fire where he gets free from all contaminations? If you please can share that, thank you.
So that planet of fire, which I explained earlier, was a Vaishvanara Loka, right? That's a Vaishvanara, the first planet, which is the planet of fire.
और प्रभु मेरे को तो आपका स्क्रीन बहुत ब्लरी लग रहा है. I don't know about others.
Not at all visible.
मतलब I'm not able to read it. I don't know if others are able to read it or not.
Zoom वो पेज काफी छोटा दिख रहा है.
Oh, okay. I will.
बीच में. I think you have to fit to width किया तो शायद.
Now.
Much better. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, so the first stop is Vaishvanara Loka, planet of the deity of fire, and then there he cleanses all his desire. This is the first stop. So he's going through these various stops, right?
Yeah, but where is it, Vaishvanara Loka? अगर अपन वैदिक cosmology में देखते हैं, तो is it in Bhumandala or above nakshatras?
Yeah, that part I also don't know. I need to research. But this is what is explained. So there are like 13 different stops, as I told yesterday. Last time. And sometimes this is also called as a planet of Archi or Vaishvanara Loka. So Archi could be, maybe we could find this. In Bhagavatam it is said as Vaishvanara Loka. However, it could be either the among the demigods, the first accessible demigod is the demigod who's in charge of fire. Agni is the closest accessible to the living entities. That's why we do the Vedic yagnas, and yagna includes the fire. So he is easily accessible. So that's the first. That's what my understanding, what I understood from here. However, I can do more research and get back. So, okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
In the fifth,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have one question. I'm a little confused and I missed my last class, so I was trying to catch up, so I could only do halfway. But this, when we're talking about this yogi, are we talking about like after he gives up his body, he travels that way because of his desire, or is it something else? I couldn't really understand it.
Yeah. So after giving up this body, his gross body, but he still has subtle body. So the yogi who is, if we look into this particular diagram, so he has crossed, he has done yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, right? And he still has desire. So this, when he has desire, after the stage of pratyahara, he's still attached. So he has desires means he has still attachment. Now, where are the desires? The desires are sitting in the mind or in the subtle body. So he keeps his subtle body, he gives his gross body, and then he takes his. This stage could happen within the current body also, with the human body also, but the meditation at that point of time is the Virat Rupa. And once he gives up the physical body, then he travels to different planets because he has desire for enjoyment. But one thing must be clear to us, that this yogi is very clear with his goal. His goal is liberation. So he knows that his goal is liberation. He started with that goal. However, he has desires and he wants to fulfill those desires. So therefore, he takes this Krama Mukti path and he goes to various planets and fulfills his desire. And today we are going to see that this yogi is now gradually, he's transcending through these layers. So first he goes to the earthly layer and gets the earthly body, and then he enjoys the desire or the sense of smell. Then he gets the watery body. Once he enjoys that, and he gives up that enjoyment and goes to the next. So he is enjoying there for some time, and then he's going to the next phase. There he enjoys something else. So when he gets the watery body, then he enjoys the sense of taste because with water, taste is connected. Then he gets the fiery body. Then he enjoys this forms, and there's fire in his eye. It's a touch. And then he gets the next body, which is ethereal body. That is the sense of sound. And then he goes to the layer of false ego, and then Mahatattva, and gradually he gives up the things. So why this path? Why this path is shown? Because in the 5th chapter, we will see that when the living entities, when they attain the body, so this will come in another couple of sessions, we'll see this chapter 5. So he gets a body, and when he's getting the body, he's getting in certain fashion. Right? So this is all discussed in the chapter 5, how the living entity comes within this material. So he's getting this body, and then he's getting all these things. We can see over here the 5 tanmatras, the 10 senses, the intelligence. So there's a sequence in which he gets these things. So when he's going out, basically he's giving up those in a sequence. So while he's coming in from here, from the spiritual world, some place in spiritual world, and then he's getting into this region, and there is a process of creation which we will discuss in chapter 5. But while he's getting out, so when he gets all these things, and then he gets into the material world. So now he has to get out. So then he has to give up all these things, all his baggages, and then finally he has to exit. So therefore, all these processes are discussed. Now, this was also discussed in the first canto. We saw that example of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He gives up these subtle things, these gross and subtle things while doing it. Is it clear?
Yeah, perfectly. Now it's clear.
Okay.
I have just one more question.
Yes.
Remember we were talking about in one of the previous chapter about the chakras, and then we were talking about how prana has to travel from the lowest chakra towards the top chakra.
Mm-hmm.
In Bhagavatam, did they also, because I'm not in a different context, when you hear about the meditation, right? This kind of a meditation, a lot of people talk about, like we were talking about prana, a lot people also refer to that as a kundalini, which
Correct.
they mention as a female energy. And, okay, you said correct, so you probably know about it. Do you like, any information or any reference to that?
No, I don't know much about the Kundalini process. It is there. It is given. One of our devotee, I'll ask you to connect with her, and she has more information about all these processes. So maybe she can explain you in detail about how this works. However, However, in her experience, it works, and it works very nicely. And she had an experience of bringing the Kundalini, the process of bringing the prana from the bottom of your back to the Swadhisthana chakra. So these are different chakras, I think, put in one of the diagrams. Just for our
and everything else, is mentioned exactly the way it is, and it is. I think probably everybody knows, like, whenever people talk about meditation, that is like the biggest thing they talk about, like chakra meditation and all. So I was a little intrigued and I was reading about it.
Yeah,
so I'll ask you here.
Yeah, so that Mataji, I'll connect you with her, and she has experience of taking the chakra from the prana from Muladhara chakra to Sahasrara chakra, from here to here. So somebody helped her to do that. And she can explain.
Is she a devotee?
Yes,
is she a devotee?
So before coming to ISKCON, she did that.
So before ISKCON, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, these processes are there. However, Bhagavatam doesn't focuses on this, because today we are going to see that, Sukadeva Goswami has explained this process. However, he says that out of this processes which he is mentioning, Bhakti is the best. So then Bhagavatam focuses only on Bhakti. Okay, so coming back to verse number 30, sorry. Okay. Sabhuta Supendriya Sannikrasham Manomayam Devamayam Vikrayam Samsadya Gatya Se Sahatena Yati Vignana Tattvam Gunasannirodham. The devotee, thus surpassing the gross and the subtle form of the covering, enters the plane of egoism. So the layers which we talked about earlier, the Mataji showed all those layers, right? Different layers which we see in here. So after crossing the ether, it goes to false ego. Right? This layer is very important layer, because unless a person is given this layer of false ego, he will not be able to identify himself as with the matter. So therefore, this layer must be given. So this layer, now he is going to give up this particular layer. And in that status, he merges the material modes of nature, which is the three gunas, ignorance, passion at this point of neutralization, and thus reaches the equilibrium of goodness. So in the false ego, layer, he gives up ignorance and passion, and then he becomes, he comes to the layer of, comes to the position of being in the mode of goodness. After this, all this egoism is merged in the Mahatattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. So then, when he goes to the Mahatattva state, and then he gives up all these three modes of material nature. So Prabhupada talks about pure self-realization, which is, as several times discussed, in the pure consciousness of admitting oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Lord. One is reinstated in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Lord, as will be clearly explained in the following verse. This stage of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord without any hopes of emolument from the Lord or any other way can be attained when the material senses are purified and original pure state of the sense is revived. So in Bhagavad Gita also we see that Krishna says that Bhakti begins from the state of a person who is in a Brahman state. Right? So Krishna says in VG 18.54. So here the Brahman state is discussed. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kamcha. So this is the Brahman state discussed. And in the next verse, Krishna is saying that bhakti begins here. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. One can understand me as I am, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the process of bhakti. So this bhakti process begins once we surpass these three modes of material nature. And Krishna in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita also tells us that you rise above the three modes. That is been instruction given by, he's saying that the Vedas are in three modes, but you rise above the three modes. So when you rise above the three modes, Vedas, which is also given by Krishna, but it is the subject matter of the Veda is contained within the three modes. However, Krishna is telling you that you go above that. So here also, if a devotee has to have association of the Lord, he wants to have association of the Lord, then he has to purify himself. He has to give up all the material contamination, including the layer of this false ego, as well as the layer of Mahatattva, and then become completely purified. And then only the real process of bhakti begins. The yogic way of purifying senses. So this is a yogic way where you go through this whatever we are explained here. You go through these steps. So that is the yogic way of purifying the senses. And then you reach the sense. You reach the stage of Vasudeva Sattva. That Vasudeva Sattva is nothing but its perfected state. So perfect purification of mind is possible when one is fixed in the conviction of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. Therefore, simple attainment of goodness is also material mode. One has to surpass this stage of material goodness and reach at the point of purified goodness, or Vasudeva Sattva. Sometimes this is called as Suddha Sattva. So Suddha Sattva, Vasudeva Sattva, this is the same. This Vasudeva Sattva helps one to enter into the kingdom of God. So when he gives up all these layers, then finally he goes to the state which is called as Suddha Sattva or Vasudeva Sattva. However, Srila Prabhupada says that if you want to reach this stage of Vasudeva Sattva, the process which is discussed here is very, very difficult. So the easier process is for the people in the age of Kali is prescribed as Sankirtana movement. Therefore, Prabhupada talks in this particular paragraph about the Sankirtana movement, which was this whole thing was started by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this is a recommendation in our scriptures also. In many scriptures, in many places you will find this recommendation that the easiest way to get to this state of Vasudeva Sattva or become Gunatita. Gunatita means getting above the three modes of material nature is by chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that is being discussed here. I'll skip it. so many things to discuss in today's class. Now, there is a prerequisite to attain this offenseless stage. So one has to, if one wants to become, wants to go to the stage of Vasudev's Tattva, then all the offenses has to be gotten rid of. So when we practice bhakti, that time what happens along with the practice of bhakti, this point we have discussed many times in the past, that along with the practice of bhakti, let me open this slide. The weeds grow. So these weeds are the impediments in the path of bhakti. If you recall, this part of this slide we have discussed in Canto 1. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela chapter 19, verse 151 to 160, it is discussed about the weeds in the process of bhakti, weeds that is growing. So bhakti is considered bhakti lata bij. It's a seed of bhakti sown in our heart by some devotee, and then it keeps on growing by watering that particular seed. And that watering process is the process of the devotional service, including chanting and hearing. But then when we follow that process, along with that tree going, some weeds are also growing. So that weeds needs to be taken care. And the biggest issue is the offenses to the devotees, to the Vaishnavas. So here, Prabhupada discusses all these points. Offenses, therefore he should be mindful of the following consideration. Offenses by one at the feet of a pure devotee may be likened like a mad elephant. Devastates a very good garden if he enters. So the comparison is given that when a mad elephant enters a garden, it destroys the entire garden. Similarly, the offenses against the devotee can destroy our bhakti. So this summary, which is of this slide, exactly describes what Srila Prabhupada has given in this 9 or 10 points. So this we have discussed earlier, so I will just skip it. We'll go to verse number 31. So finally, this yogi now will merge with the Supreme Brahman, the Adi Purusha or Mahavishnu, and he does not return to this world. So here the diagram shows that this yogi, he comes out of all these layers, and now he will merge with the Mahavishnu, in the body of Mahavishnu. In this case, it is discussed like that. Tenatmanat manam upaiti satam anandamayo avasane yetam gatim bhagavatim gatoya savai punarneha visajjate agna. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of God in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by the material world, and he never returns. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are two kinds of liberation. One is impersonal liberation versus the personal liberation. This point has been discussed many times, so I will skip this part. That impersonal liberation means you come out of this cycle of birth and death, and basically you either hang around in the Brahma Jyoti, or you again can merge within the body of Mahavishnu. And personal liberation means you get personal service of the Supreme Lord, either in the Vaikuntha planet or in the Goloka or in Ayodhya. So impersonal liberation and their future, the impersonalists who aspire to merge with the impersonal Jyoti effulgence of the Supreme Lord, but have no conception of loving devotional service to him and his personal form in this spiritual manifestation, may be compared to certain species of fish who, being born in the rivers and rivulets, migrate into the great ocean. So the rivers, this is an example given in Nectar of Devotion, where the fish which are there in the river, which is those fishes which are very close to the ocean. So they go to the ocean, but they hang around in the top part of the ocean. They don't go deeper in the ocean. They cannot stay in the ocean indefinitely, for their surge of sense gratification brings them back to the rivers and the stream to spawn. So this is one particular fish which is available in our area. Excuse me. That fish does that. Salmon fish. They cannot stay in the ocean indefinitely, for the surge of sense gratification brings them back to the rivers and streams to spawn. So this salmon fish, they are born in the in some pond or in some river, and then when they grow up, they go to the ocean, and then they hang around in the ocean for a year or two, and then they come back, and they come back for the process of spawning again or giving birth again. As soon as they give birth, then they die. So similarly, when the materialist becomes frustrated in his attempt to enjoy himself in the limited world, he may seek impersonal liberation by merging either with the causal ocean or with the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence. However, as neither the causal ocean nor the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence afford any superior substance for association and engagement of senses. So this is the difficulty, of impersonal liberation. There is no service. There is no exchange of results. The impersonalist will fall again into the limited material world and become entangled once more in the will of birth and death, drawn on the inexhaustible desire for sensual engagement. So, soul, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita explains twice, once in chapter 3, another in chapter 18, that soul is active in nature. It needs engagement. And it gets the happiness by engaging in some kind of activity and service. So if that part is taken away, it becomes bored. You cannot stay in a place, even the best place in the universe, and have no accompaniment. You get bored. Excuse me. So therefore, he again comes back to the material world to enjoy. But any devotee who enters in the kingdom of God by transcendental engagement of his service in devotional service, and who associates with the liberated soul and the personality of God there, will be attracted to the unlimited surrounding in the world. So Bhakti Yogi has no attraction for any other process. Bhaktas know right from the beginning, they derive their satisfaction by just pleasing Krishna. So they are not attracted to any other process. And then there are two words Prabhupada is explaining, Santam and Anandam. We should therefore note the two words, Santam and Anandam, which denotes that devotional service of the Lord can really bestow upon devotees two important benedictions, namely peace and satisfaction. Peace of heart and satisfaction of heart. Unless the person is satisfied, he will not be able to act. So the impersonalist is desirous of becoming one with the Supreme, or in other words, he wants to become supreme. This is a myth only. The mystic yogi becomes encumbered by various mystic powers and so have neither peace nor satisfaction. So neither impersonalist nor the yogis can have real peace and satisfaction. But the devotee can become fully peaceful and satisfied because of his association with the complete whole. Therefore, merging in the absolute or attaining some mystic power has no attraction for the devotees. So, finally, in the conclusion, Prabhupada is talking about, to be more clear, if one wants to attain the stage of love, Godhead, he must give up all desires for material enjoyment. He should refrain from worshipping any kind of demigod, and he should devote himself only to the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He must give up the foolish idea of becoming one with the Lord and the desire to have some wonderful powers just to get ephemeral adoration of the world. The pure devotee is only favorably engaged in devotional service of the Lord without any hope for him only. So he has no other desire than to please the Lord. That his happiness is in pleasing or serving the Lord. This will bring about the love of God or the stage of Shantam and Ananda, as stated in this. So this diagram we have referred many times and understood it clearly. So this completes the discussion, the two paths. Sukadeva Goswami is explaining, right? So Sukadeva Goswami, now he's going to give the pramana, two eternal paths which he has explained. What are those two eternal paths? One is through this path, the yogi who is detached yogi, this is one path, and then this is the second path. Okay. So Sukadeva Goswami gives pramana. Pramana means the source from where he is getting this information. Ete sishtite nipa vedagati tvaya abhiprashta cha sanatane cha ye vai pura brahmana tushta aradhito bhagavan vasudeva. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all this I have described in reply to your proper inquiries just according to the version of the Vedas. And it is eternal too. Described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So he's saying that this is not my version, whatever I explained, this is not my version. He is giving the reference. So therefore, this pramana is a very important part. Whenever Srila Prabhupada, if you hear his classes, when you hear his classes or his purports, excuse me, we'll see that Prabhupada gives pramana in after every other statement. So it is very important for us who are following Vaishnavism that pramana is a very important part of the aspect of our sampradaya. And in fact, all other sampradayas, bona fide sampradayas do the same thing. That you cannot produce something from your mind. It has to come either from the scripture, either from the Vedas, or either from explained by some other acharyas. So even Lord Krishna, when we see, he also gives pramana in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He's saying 13.5. So if you see the 13th chapter, Arjuna is asking this question: Prakriti, what is Prakriti? What is Purusha? All this. It is asking 8 things. So this, after explaining this, Krishna is saying that after this question, Krishna is starting to answer immediately couple of things, and then he says that knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of the activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. So Krishna is also giving pramana, and similarly Krishna is also giving pramana in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna also is teaching by his own example, like in the 23rd and the 24th verse. That, he who discards scriptural injunction and acts according to his own means, it is neither perfection nor happiness nor supreme bliss. So one has to follow the scriptures, or one has to give pramanas. So this is the importance of the pramanas. So now there are 2 different ways of liberation, the 2 different ways of reaching to the spiritual side, by getting emancipation from the material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God, or by gradual process through other higher planets of the universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. So these 2 systems is discussed here, is actually coming from the Vedas. So this is the pramana. The Vedic version in these connections are, I'm going to skip the verse: those who are free from all material desires, which are disease of the heart, are able to conquer the death and enter into the kingdom of God through the archiplanets. So, starting with the archiplanets, as we said, like either Vaishvanara or archiplanet. So, this is the starting point. If you recall, in our discussion we had this. So they go through these archiplanets. There are like 13 different planetary systems through which this person who is an attached yogi goes through that. And finally, he gets the liberation. This Vedic version is corroborated with the version of Srimad Bhagavatam, and later it is further confirmed by Srila Goswami, affirms that the truth was disclosed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, Vasudev, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. This was disclosed by Krishna himself to Lord Brahma. The disciplic succession holds that the Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, and by Brahma to Narada, and by Narada to Vyasdev, and then by Vyasdev to Sukadeva Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all the authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is a way of knowing the Vedic knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by one's erudite scholarship or by fashionable interpretation of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted, because the truth is truth. Fantastic. So this gives the essence of what Srila Prabhupada meant. Similarly, in our preaching, we just have to maintain this. Whenever we speak of something, has to come from, we need to be able to give the pramanas. And then Prabhupada talks about accepting the authorities. So people accept some kind of authorities. Prabhupada is saying that in the modern world also people accept the authorities of the modern scientists. So he's saying that okay, you can for common things which is happening around the world, you can accept those views of the scientists. However, for this knowledge which is beyond the perceptions of the scientist, then you follow the Vedas. So accept this authority. So Prabhupada is trying to tell. Now, verse number 33 to 37 is establishing sadhana bhakti is the best of all. So, two paths has been discussed in the last two sections, and kingdom. So this one path is the practice and process of the yogi who is an advanced yogi, 15 to 21, and 22 to 32 is the talking about the gradual liberation or the karma mukti. Now, in this section 33 to 37 is establishing the sadhana bhakti as the best of all the paths. So in fact, there are totally three paths. So when if you recall in chapter 2, when the chapter 1 began, not chapter 2, that chapter began because Sukadeva Goswami came at that time and Maharaj Parikshit and asked him the question, what is the best possible thing a person who is about to die, what is the so here it is here. Sukadeva Goswami, so after describing the path of Ashtanga Yoga, which was preferred by the preferred path for some sages in the assembly, Sukadeva Goswami now gives his own opinion about the path of attaining the ultimate perfection as the answer to the Parikshit Maharaj's question about the duty of a dying man. So this is 1937. In this particular verse, he's asking those two questions. So now he has given three paths. One is the path of sadhana bhakti, and second is the path of the Virat Yoga meditator, the desired or attached yogi, and third path is for the detached. So of these three paths, what is the best? So that is what he is going to answer in this verse, verse number 33. Let's read verse number 33. Nahi yato anya siva pantha Vishwata samsruta iha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhavet. So Sukadeva Goswami is saying what is the best path of all these three. So the best path of all this thing is the path that gives rise to Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga Yato Bhavet. So that is the best path. Bhakti Yoga unto who? Vasudeva Bhagavati. Unto Lord Vasudeva. So that path which kindles the desire to perform Bhakti Yoga for Vasudeva, that is the best path. So what is that path that kindles Bhakti Yoga? That is the Sadhana Bhakti. So there is Sadhana, we have heard in Nectar of Devotion about the Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, these are Sadhya Bhakti. One cannot practice Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti. One can practice Sadhana Bhakti, and when we practice Sadhana Bhakti, then if Krishna desires, he is happy with our performance of of Sadhana Bhakti, then he can bestow upon us Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti. That is actually Krishna's prerogative. So, in Nectar of Devotion, there is a definition of Sadhana Bhakti. If we yeah, so this is the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. Iti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sa sadhana vida nitya siddhyasya bhavasya prakrityam vidhi sadhyata. So, when a transcendental devotional service by which the love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called as sadhana bhakti or regulative discharge of devotional service. So basically, the goal of sadhana bhakti is bhava bhakti. When we are performing sadhana bhakti, the goal of that sadhana bhakti is actually bhava bhakti. So, and that sadhana bhakti is performed using our senses. Sadhana is performed using the senses, and that gives rise to bhava. So the point over here is that process which gives rise to bhakti yoga or bhava bhakti or prema bhakti, that is the best. That's what he's saying. There is no better path than this particular path. So for those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at the direct devotional service of God. So that is the most auspicious path. So Prabhupada talks about most auspicious path is Bhakti Yoga. As will be clarified in the next verse, devotional service or direct Bhakti Yoga is the only absolute or auspicious means of deliverance from the grip of material existence. There are many indirect methods for deliverance from the clutches of material existence, but none of them is easy and auspicious as Bhakti Yoga. The means of Jnana Yoga and others are allied disciplines and are not independent in delivering a performance. Such activities help one to reach to the stage of Bhakti Yoga after many, many years. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvabhuti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. So of these three paths, the path of sadhana bhakti is the best. Now, Prabhupada also puts in his purport that the impersonal path is troublesome for embodied soul. This is 12.5. We have discussed many times. I'll skip these sections. And then Lord Krishna's instruction. So he is giving all this pramana that why this bhakti yoga is the best, or why the sadhana bhakti process is the best. Because first, it is very difficult to perform as per Krishna in 12.5, or actually 12.1. Arjuna is asking this question, which is better? And Krishna is answering that focusing on the or performing impersonal bhakti is very troublesome. And also, Lord Krishna's instructions in Gita. As far as yoga systems are concerned, it is said in Bhagavad Gita 6.47 This is the second pramana is given from Krishna's own statement. That among the mystics who pursue absolute truth, the one who is always engaged in the service of the Lord is the greatest of them. Yoginam api sarves. And also Krishna's last instruction, 1866. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam. So this is how Prabhupada is explaining us. And then Srila Sridhar Swami and all other acharyas like Srila Jiva Goswami agrees that Bhakti Yoga is not only easy, simple, natural and free from trouble, but is only source of happiness for the human. So, somebody engages, then Krishna himself helps the devotee. How do we know that Krishna helps this devotee? So towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, in 1860 onwards, if you read, then you will see that Krishna is saying that, by my mercy, this is going to happen. By my mercy, so he is going to help us. Okay, so somebody may say that this is the verdict of Sukadeva Goswami himself, with whatever he is saying, that the sadhana bhakti is the best. But no, Sukadeva Goswami again gives another pramana. He is saying that no, it's not my statement. It is a statement of Lord Brahma himself. The Lord Brahma, he, after studying the Vedas 3 times, scrutinizingly studying the Vedas 3 times, he came to the same conclusion as what I have come. So therefore, the path of sadhana bhakti is the best. Bhagavan Brahma Tatsena Liravi Aksham Manishyaya Padadya Vasya Kutosto Ratiratman Yato Bhave. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he asserted that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of the religion. So Brahmaji studied this Veda 3 times. Now Brahmaji's mind, if you see, his body. See, his body is made up of intelligence. So with that kind of body, when Brahmaji is studying this, and when he gives the verdict that he has studied 3 times, and then he gives the verdict that of these 3 processes, the best process is the process of Bhakti Yoga, which is the sadhana bhakti. So Lord Brahma is the highest authority. He is the first living entity in this material world, and his body himself his body itself is like body made up of intelligence, and it is his verdict that this is the best process. Now here, the word Brahma. So here the word Bhagavan. So the word Bhagavan, Brahma, Bhagavan, Brahma. Brahma means the Vedas. Bhagavan is the personality of Brahma, the great personality. So here, Srila Prabhupada translates this Bhagavan word as the great personality Brahma. However, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates this word Bhagavan as Lord Vishnu himself. So there's a difference of translation given by Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and the Acharyas lot of times they differ. So, but the meaning, the ultimate meaning is same. Whether it is Lord Brahma or whether it is Lord Vishnu, either of them, they scrutinizingly studied it 3 times, and then they have come to this conclusion. So Sukadeva Goswami is saying that, okay, this is not my conclusion. This is a conclusion. I'm just repeating the conclusion of the authorities. Sukadeva Goswami is referring to the highest authority, Lord Brahma, who is the qualitative incarnation of God. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation, although Brahmaji was to hear Vedic instruction directly from the personality of Godhead in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas. Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times as generally done by all the scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas, and after scrutinizingly examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure and unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the topmost perfection of all religious process. And this is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita directly presented by the personality of Godhead himself. Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas, and thus who are against this conclusion are only Veda Vada Rata. This is discussed in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, 242. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 242. Okay. So now after discussing, talking about the personality of Godhead, okay, now how do one perceive the presence of Lord? How do one see the Lord? Because now they have talked about the best process. Now how to see the Lord? How to understand the presence of the Lord in this material? So one way is through the scriptures, and the other way is using your intelligence. So this verse, particular verse, is a very important verse, which talks about that perceiving the Lord and the jivas, how to do that. And let's read the words and let's go into details of this word. Probably we're going to spend most of the time on this particular verse. And I have another extra slide which I already shared with you. Probably that will take a lot of time to understand. So let's do this. Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshita Sarva Swatmana Hari Lakshir Buddhiradi Bhirdrashta Lakshane Anumapakai. Okay. So the first line is Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu. So this particular verse has been explained in a certain way by Srila Prabhupada. And when we read this purport, what we are trying to achieve by understanding this particular verse is how can we see the Lord in this material world? How can we perceive the presence of the Lord? So the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intellect. So this is saying that the Lord is there within every individual soul, within the body of every individual soul. And how do we understand that? So we can understand by anumana and the act of seeing and then taking the help of our intelligence and using the anumana. So the whole purport, Srila Prabhupada is trying to explain this. So the first paragraph, Prabhupada talks about how to perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. And then he's giving the steps to perceive the presence of the soul. And then he's giving the steps to perceive the presence of the Paramatma within the body. And then he's explaining how to take guidance from the super soul. And then finally he's saying that Bhagavan is the source of everything. So what we're going to study in this particular purport, many times we have studied this. However, here now we're going to look at it in a different way. So therefore, I'm going to use this particular explanation of how to perceive the existence of Bhagavan, which was a class given by His Grace Radhikaraman Prabhu in 2015 in ISV. So when I was hearing this glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, I don't recall when I heard this, but in the second part of the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, who explains this particular what I'm trying to explain here, he explains. So I would highly recommend you to hear the part 1 as well as part 2 of this class, Glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a fantastic class. Our perception of Srimad Bhagavatam will completely change after hearing these classes. In particular, this particular section which Prabhu explains, he takes a lot of time to explain this. And I have exactly copied what he has explained. And I have given you the reference point over here. This is a link to the class. If you click on this link, it will take you to the exact point where this class begins, where this particular discussion begins. So you have this, and you can hear this, and it will take multiple hearings, I'm sure, to really understand what is being said. Because Srila Jiva Goswami, he's Acharya who is like par excellence. He's amazing. There's no description. All our current acharyas and previous acharyas, they have very high regard for Srila Jiva Goswami and his writings. And recently, we had disappearance of Srila Jiva Goswami, so this would be a good way to remember Srila Jiva Goswami's word by understanding the arguments which Srila Jiva Goswami is trying to give in this particular verse. So what is he trying to prove? So Jiva Goswami, he is trying to use some tools in this verse. He's trying to use some tools. And from using those tools, these are the two tools he is using, Anumana and Anupapatti. And he's trying to prove from this tool, from the physical objects. Physical objects means all these objects which we see around us, like this computer, this table, this chair. So from the physical objects, he is trying to prove that there is an existence of soul. And from the existence of soul, he is going to prove the existence of super soul. From the existence of super soul, he is going to prove the existence of the Supreme Lord. So this is really, really excellent piece of work which he has done. And it is going to help all of us in our preaching. So therefore, I found it very interesting and way of presenting. And since this is part of the work which we are studying right now, I thought, let me just bring it in here so that you can also use this tool to explain somebody when you are teaching. So I will not be able to justify this work because I have my own limitations. Therefore, I put the exact reference over here. So you can also listen to this a couple of times and try to understand. So I'll give my best to make it clear. However, because of my limitation, it will not be as good as what Prabhuji has presented. So let's begin. So there are two different understandings. I will take this understanding second. First, I will try to explain what is there in the verse itself, right? And we'll just quickly go over that. So first part is this one, Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu. So what does that mean? Well, the devotee can see that the Paramatma is sitting in everyone's heart. How does he see that? That he sees by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. The devotee by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And that how does he get the mercy of the Supreme Lord? So Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridhi Sannivishto Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanich. So 15.15, it is said that Krishna is saying that I give the knowledge, remembrance, and the forgetfulness. So those who believe in the scriptures, by the knowledge or the intelligence given by the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul, Krishna, can understand the presence of Paramatma sitting in everybody's heart. And then how is that intelligence given? Intelligence is given by Lakshaner Anumapati. So Krishna gives the intelligence to the devotee. And what kind of intelligence is giving? He's giving the intelligence by which the devotee can use logic or inference to understand this fact that the Supreme Soul is sitting in everyone's heart. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining this particular point that when one sees that someone's intelligence is acting or someone is acting intelligently, and then one carefully observes that, then he can see that there is someone behind that person who is using his intelligence and acting. So it's not the intelligence acting, somebody is acting intelligently, but it is not the intelligence acting. There is somebody who is behind this person who is acting intelligent. And that person who is behind this intelligence is the soul. Okay? So, intelligence or mind is just an instrument, and the soul is using that particular instrument, and that is how the existence of soul is proved. That's the first step. So this is how Prabhupada puts in this particular purport. And then how does the super soul, the proof of super soul exist is proved. The proof of super soul exist is given that the two people they act or they put same effort to get some results, and sometimes they get the same results, sometimes they get a different result. So there is somebody who is controlling this result, and who is that somebody? That is the super soul. So this is actually being explained in this purport. Okay? And also in the 18.5, 18.14, not 5. It is explained about the 5 factors of actions. So these 5 factors of actions, that is the place of action, the performance, the senses, and different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. So this particular thing, this particular verse talks about that there are 5 things which is responsible for giving the results. So the presence of super soul is proved by the fact that two people, again I'll repeat, the two people performing the same kind of action, and they're putting the same kind of efforts, and then they get different kind of results. So why is that? So there is somebody in charge who is giving the different results, and that is ultimately the super soul is given out. Or a same person doing the same kind of action at different times, and he's putting the same kind of efforts, but he's getting different results. So that is also one of the examples. Okay. Now, any question, any discussion on this particular point?
Guruji, what are the things from? One is pramana, and another is what is
that I have not covered yet.
Okay. So basically, how the just to recap, just what I understood, how the soul is first presence is because whatever the action that is happening is driven by the soul. So in that way, they're proving that because soul is responsible for animating the body and whatever, right? So in that way, that yes, proving that the soul is present, and then basically then comparing the actions of two persons and how the results matches or differs, and that is controlled by the supreme. Is that how the problem? Hierarchy of this logic problem?
No, the first is trying to prove the existence of soul, right? That's the first. So,
Okay.
So when you are using your intelligence to perform something, right? So when somebody is trying to use his or act intelligently, okay? When you see, let's say you, as Rajaraman Prabhu, is seeing that somebody is acting intelligently, right? Then you can infer that the intelligence or the mind is just a tool which is used by somebody, because everybody has intelligence, right? So some people may be able to use that intelligence properly, some people may be able to use the intelligence. If intelligence is the guiding factor, then it should work same all the time, isn't it? If the intelligence is controlling everything. However, we see that somebody who is using his intelligence properly, then you can infer from there that there is someone behind the intelligence who is using his intelligence and mind to do the action. So who is that someone behind the intelligence? And that is the proof of the soul. Okay?
Yes, sir.
That's what is Jiva Goswami saying here. And sorry, Prabhupada saying in his book.
Okay.
So there is an intelligent person who is using the intelligence to perform the action. So this concludes the presence of Jivatma. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we are going to go and see through the lens of Srila Jiva Goswami. This is more complicated. I'll go very slowly, step by step. Okay. So at every slide, I'm going to stop. And if you have anything, please let me know. First is he's trying to use this tool to prove the existence. So the tools. So here the first thing is he's just telling us that what are the tools he's going to use. Okay. So there are two things. One is the methods of reasoning. And the first method of reasoning is anumapakai. So anumapakai is nothing but anumana or logic or inference. Okay. And the second one is lakshana. Lakshana means actually lakshana means characteristics of an object. But in this particular sense, in this particular usage, here it means process of reasoning. How he is going to, what reasons, what is the way of reasoning, how he is going to give his reasoning, right? And that process which he is going to use, it is called as anupapatti. Now, this is just a name, right? Now, what is the meaning of anupapatti? We'll see that later. So these are the two methods he is using. One is anumana and second is anupapatti. So using this two, what is he going to prove? He is going to prove the physical objects, right? And then he is also going to prove individual soul as well as the super soul, as well as the Bhagavan. Three things, four things actually. He doesn't say over here. In his class has not put, so I have not put it over here. But basically, these are the things which he is going to prove from the physical objects, the individual soul, and then from individual soul to super soul, and from super soul to Bhagavan. So, how?
Second and third, Prabhu, from the Sanskrit standpoint, Prabhu, it's the individual soul is second and third is super soul. From Sanskrit, they look the same, Prabhu.
Yeah, that Prabhu has defined it as same. One meaning of Svatmanaha is super soul, and one meaning is the soul, Jivatma and Parma. Okay. Next. Now, what is Anuman? So most of us understand what is Anuman or logical inference. So Anumana is the Indian logic or Nyaya. It's the second of the Pramanas. The first is, what is the first Pramana? Pratyaksha Pramana. There are three Pramanas. One is Pratyaksha, second is Anumana, third is Shabda. So this is the second of the Pramanas. Now, how does this work? Anuman, how does it work? So, in Anumana Pramana, the example is given over here. With the example, I will try to explain. Is that a mountain has a, this is a statement, a mountain has a smoke. And then there is a principle. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Okay? So, this is actually a principle. It's a general principle. Wherever we see smoke, indicates there is a fire. Now, this general principle in Sanskrit, it is known as Vyapti. So, from this statement A and statement B, the logical conclusion is that the mountain has fire. Isn't it? Everything clear so far? Now, if you want to disprove this statement that the mountain has fire, then either you have to disprove this or you have to disprove this. To disprove the above, you have to disagree with A or B. So you can say that sometimes there is fire without smoke. Then this will not be a logical conclusion. But if you accept A and B, then C is a must. If you accept a mountain as smoke and you also accepted this, then the logical conclusion that mountain has fire. Right? Okay? Should I move forward?
Yes, Guru.
Okay. Third. Now, what is anupapatti? So, anupapatti means it's an argument by contradiction. So, we have heard this many times, but we are not familiar with this term anupapatti. So, Jiva Goswami says that anupapatti means argument by contradiction. So, you want to prove something, then you take the opposite of that and that say that that opposite is true. And then you said that opposite, when you say the opposite true, it leads to absurdity. Therefore, the original the thing statement which we had must be true. So here I will again read it. You take the opposite of what you want to prove, and the opposite leads to absurdity. Therefore, the opposite must be true. Okay. Example. If you want to prove it's a daytime, right, then begin with it's a night, and then this leads to contradiction. So if I want to say it's a daytime, then I begin with it's a night. Then my statement of the sun is there. Then it leads to logical contradictions. Hence, it must be a day. It leads to the night leads to logical contradictions. Hence, the opposite must be true. It's a daytime. Okay? So another example which we have heard many times, that if you want to prove we are soul, then we start with a argument that we are body, and then if we are body, then then we have further arguments about that, and then that leads to logical contradiction, and then we say, okay, no, we are not this body, we are actually soul. So in English, it is called as untenable. Anupapatti means untenable. Any question on this? Is it clear? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I will move. So now you have understood Anumana, you understood Anupapatti. Now using these two tools, Anumana and Anupapatti, Jiva Goswami is going to take the physical objects, and using the physical objects, he is going to prove the existence of soul. And from there, he is going to prove the existence of super soul. And then using this three, he is going to prove the existence of Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, as a person. So how he does that? So these are the three statements given by him. Physical objects reveal the Jiva as the seer or observer. Jiva reveals the existence of the inner controller of super soul, and the inner controller reveals the existence of yet another superior being, namely Bhagavan. Okay. Now he is going to start with the process of proving the existence of soul from the physical objects. Okay. Excuse me. Proving the existence of soul from the physical objects. So here, in the picture you are seeing a person, a lady is seeing something. Okay. So this is a seer. He is seeing something. Now, Jiva Goswami is using Anumana and Anupapatti. So first, he is using Anupapatti to prove this. So this is a statement. Without a self or individual seer, it is not possible for the inert physical object such as intelligence to see. So Prabhu added this, so I have also added this example over here, BG74. What is BG74? Bhumir apo analo vayu kan monobuddhi ahankari iti anne bhinna prakriti asmita. So If you see earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, falls in all together, this 8 constitutes my separated material entity. So of all these 8, of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, intelligence is subtler than mind, mind is subtler than ether. So basically, if you go towards this side, it has become grosser and grosser. So Jiva Goswami he just uses intelligence, one word he is using. And he is saying that without individual seer. So what he's trying to say, that these physical objects are all dead. These physical objects are all dead, including the intelligence. So intelligence and below. So they don't have any consciousness. That's what his point is. So without individual seer, it is not possible for the inert means they are dead, physical objects such as intelligence to see. So these dead objects actually cannot see. So therefore, there is somebody who is a seer. That's what Jiva Goswami is saying. As soon as there is perception, then there is a seer behind that perception. Means there is somebody who is seeing it. And that seer is actually soul. So therefore, he gives the example that a dead body, sorry, not dead boy, but dead body. If you take a dead body which has no consciousness, then it cannot see or perceive. We have seen all these things. Other example is a table or a chair or a wall. They cannot see or perceive. Right? So this is the Anupapatti argument which Jiva Goswami is using, that if something is perceived, means there is a perceiver which actually sees. So like our eyes, our nose and ears, these are actually dead. Unless there is a living entity within this body, then the person cannot see. So now he proves the same thing, existence of soul. Okay, any question here? I mean, for us, these things should be easier because we have studied Srila Prabhupada book. This part should be easier. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu, no doubt.
Yeah. So now he is using Anumana. Using Anumana, he is saying that intelligence, etc., as the physical objects are dependent upon agent because they are instruments. So what he is saying that intelligence, etc., means intelligence, mind, other things, right? Which we see in 7.4, as a physical objects are dependent on an agent. Now the agent means over here the soul, because they are instruments. So he's saying that this intelligence is an instrument. An instrument cannot act on its own. Right? Like a car is an instrument, a computer is an instrument. Anything physical which we see, that's an instrument. In the Jiva Goswami gives the example of an axe. So at that time, all these things were not there. So he is using the example of an axe. So an axe cannot act on his own because it's an instrument. So in order the instrument to work, you need a person to use the instrument to work. So this is the Anumana which Jiva Goswami is saying. For an activity happening in the world, there must be an agent behind to make the activity happen. Now, if we put the statements as per the Anumana, so the Anumana we have explained over here. The example, mountain has smoke. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So there is a Vyapti. And the conclusion is mountain has fire. Right? So now we are going to, so Jiva Goswami puts this as per the Anumana. So physical objects are instruments. He's first putting. So example is X. The Vyapti is an instrument must be always dependent on an agent for an activity. So that is Vyapti. And then he's saying that physical objects are dependent on an agent. This is the conclusion. So hence he is proving that this agent, physical objects are dependent on an agent. So this agent is a soul, hence proved the existence of the living entity. So this is how he proves. Now, if somebody says that, okay, these physical objects can work on its own, then they have to come up with their own examples to show us, because the thing is they have to prove that. In our experience, we have never seen any physical objects working on its own. So therefore, now there are robots and all these things. But still, behind the robot, there is the intelligence of human which created the robot in first place. Then the robot is working on it. So robot by itself, it is not programmed, then it won't work. So somebody has to program it to work. Right? So therefore, this is the proof of the living entity or soul from physical objects using logic. Okay? Any discussion? Clear? Should I move forward?
Yes, sir.
Now he's trying to prove the existence of super soul from living entity. Now this is a little more technical compared to what we have understood now. He's saying because one can see that the jivas are not independent agents or enjoyers, and because karma or activity is also inert, therefore jiva's inclination for being the independent enjoyers cannot take place without a particular instigator. Okay. So here we see, I will read it again. Because one can see that jivas are not independent agents or enjoyers. This is the statement of Jiva Goswami. And because karma is or activity are also inert. So let's go through this sequence and try to understand it, the statements above. So we see that human beings must experience things that they do not want to experience, like for example sickness, and enjoy things that they sometimes have not desired. So who is instigating such experience? And the answer is Super. So Jiva Goswami is trying to say that jivas are not independent enjoyers. Normally, the living entities are naturally enjoyers. We come Anandamaya Abhyasa. We come into this material world to enjoy. We are naturally enjoyers. We do not want to put ourselves in a suffering situation. So we are naturally enjoyers. And we also see that this enjoying tendency is constantly being frustrated ultimately by somebody, some particular instigator. So who is this instigator? So that instigator is the super soul. So far clear?
Yeah, bro.
Okay. Now, a question may arise that things are happening based on our karma. So Jiva Goswami is answering this here. He's saying that, and because karma or activity is also inert. What it means? So what is karma? So karma is nothing but we do an action, and then there is a reaction to that action. That is karma. Okay? So it is actually just a history. So history is that in fact it's dead. It's just dead. It's inert. It cannot act on its own. In order to make the history applied, that somebody has to do it. So that's what Jiva Goswami is saying, that karma is inert or dead. Karma is just a history. So the super soul make the people act as intermediate instruments to give back the result of our karma. And then Jiva Goswami is giving the example of just as a woodcutter and other laborers. So first he proved that physical object which is acts cannot act on its own. It needs an agent to act, and that is a living entity. Or according to the example, it is a woodcutter or a laborer. So this woodcutter or laborer is also working under the direction of his boss. And that boss is the super soul in this case. So Jiva is not independent. The instigator is the super soul. It is dependent on the super soul. So that thing which it is instigator, person who is instigating these actions on us, or forcing things on us, is the super soul. It is not karma. Hence it proves the existence of super soul from the living entity. Any thoughts, any questions, any discussion? Should I move forward?
Yes, Prabhu.
Clear, right? So the last one, and this is the most technical of all this, is proving the existence of Bhagavan from the super soul. So Yoga Swami is saying, if someone superior enters the jiva with all his portions, who is entering into the jiva with all his portions? That is the super soul. Super soul is entering the jiva, right? Is there in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying, Sarvasya chaham vidishannu visto. 15:15. Then what Yoga Swami is saying, he would not be Ishvara or the controller because of the absence of completeness. Now, what does he mean by that? So Prabhu explains that. First of all, we need to understand step by step that what is the role of Paramatma. The Paramatma is the feature of the Lord who is only in this material world. And what is his job? Upadrashta, Anumantascha, Bhota, Bhakta, Maheshwar. So he is there in this material world and he is sitting Ishvara Sarabhutanam, Viddesha, Arjuna Tishtati. He is sitting in the region of heart along with the living entity. So either he is inside the body, he is inside us, or whether he is outside us. But this feature of the Lord is within this material world. He is contained within this material world. It's fully within the material world. Paramatma feature is not available outside this material world. So what Srila Jiva Goswami is trying to explain is that if that controller, means the Paramatma of the living entity, was present in the material world in 100%, then he would not truly be a controller because his power and his ability would be contained by the very thing he is trying to control. So he is trying to say that if that super soul who is within this material world, there is no feature of that super soul outside that, outside the material world. If he is 100% within this, then he will be controlled. He will be himself controlled by the law of the universe. That's what is the meaning. So again, Prabhu puts it in a different way to explain it more clearly. In this world, there is someone, which is super soul, who is giving us our experiences. But that person, means super soul, must have a part of him or some aspect of him outside this world. He must be greater than this world and the living entity. Otherwise, he would not be able to control it. And then another statement, anyone who is able to control control something or superior to something, anything else, has to be able to stand outside of that or to be greater in some way from that thing. The point is that if we want to control something, we have to be outside of that object to control something. And if we are within that, we are contained within that, then we'll be controlled by the same law. So aspect of super soul has to be outside the universe, material universe, in order for the Paramatma to control the living entity. That part we already proved in the previous. So again, he says that if there is no aspect of super soul beyond this world, then he too will be completely enveloped or covered by the product of this. So that aspect of the super soul outside this world is Bhagavan. Now, I'm not sure how much I've tried to explain, but how much clear it is to all of you. Here is an example which may make it more clear. The example is, if we want to control a computer, then we cannot be within the computer and try to control it. So computer, within the computer, it is all zeros and ones, right? So our intelligence has to go beyond the intelligence of the computer in order to control the computer. Similarly, if you want to control any toy or a camera or an electronic gadget, we cannot be within the system to control it. We have to be outside the system to control it. And what is that thing which is outside the system? In this case, super soul is within the universe, and the feature of super soul, which is outside the universe, that is Bhagavan. Right? Now, there is one question which is coming in the mind, that is, the Bhagavan is a person. Right? That is because he is trying to prove Supreme Personality of Godhead as a person. Because that's a proof. So already we saw that anything which is inert cannot be controlled. So that logic goes to the living entity, that logic goes to the super soul, as well as that logic goes to the Bhagavan feature. He has to be a person to control it. He cannot be something dead. Okay? He has to be a person to control it. Any questions or discussions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhu, so this whole, the last section that we discussed, that was based on the premise that Paramatma exists only in the material world. But, Prabhu, we usually hear it in classes, but is there a conclusive, is there a, authoritative proof in the scriptures where it says that Paramatma is only limited to the material world?
The Paramatma feature?
Yes.
Yeah, in the
Is
chapter,
there any place in the Shastra it says?
the creation process itself describes it.
Clearly that outside of material existence, there is no Paramatma?
Yeah, because this Paramatma, the feature of Paramatma, if you see,
Most of the time we hear that I'm, even Krishna says that I am pervaded to my personality, or whatever it is, right? Or I exist in everyone's heart. But, the other part is not there. Many places it says that Paramatma is there in the material world, but the other part, is it also very concretely stated? Or we know it only because Acharyas have given them?
No. So, if you see the creation process, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, no.
Yeah, so here the entire creation is discussed, right? So how the elements are created and all these things are discussed. Finally, it is discussed that Mahavishnu enters into the universe as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So all these discussions are there in Bhagavatam itself. In the later on chapter, it will be there.
Yes, so Prabhu, here it says how Shri Vishnu comes and he is the Paramatma.
Correct.
Is there a conclusive thing that Paramatma feature is not available anywhere else outside? Has it been explicitly stated? That's what I'm asking.
That I have not come across. But there is a role of Paramatma, right? I mean, this role of Paramatma is very clearly given, right? And Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, for the strong mantras. So he doesn't have any role outside this universe.
That would be again inference, right? I mean, if we are inferencing that based on what has been discussed about Paramatma.
Right, because there is already role defined, right? That this is the role of Paramatma. So the opposite like is all the is not required. You can say like in the sense, and of course over here, Jiva Goswami himself is giving this. This proof.
I mean, I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
I
If we
understand.
present this, somebody will ask, right?
Correct. They can ask.
Somebody may ask this, right? Like, what is the proof that there is no Paramatma feature outside?
It's
Right?
a good.
Because if you go to other schools of philosophy, right, who don't accept the Bhagwan teacher, for whom Paramatma is everything, right? So they may come back and say, okay, show me the proof where it says that Paramatma doesn't exist outside the material world.
Right. I mean, I don't have any. I mean, as of now, I don't have anything. I have written down this question.
Yeah, because when right now, Prabhu, dealing with logic is a little troublesome, right? Because then we have to really follow the rules of logic.
Correct.
So here, when we say that, okay, Paramatma's role is so and so, so based on that, we cannot conclude that where there is no need, he doesn't exist. That cannot be concluded. So
Correct. Yeah.
based on what is there, right? So
Correct.
that was my question. So if there is a proof from Shastra where it says that in Vaikuntha or in Goloka there is no Paramatma feature available at all, then maybe this will be complete.
Correct.
When we are trying to deal with some arguments or the teaching.
I'm pretty sure it's there in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, and if I vaguely recall, there is some statements like that Paramatma feature is not. But I need to figure it out. And to give
Another thing is that we know that Vishnus are only there for the purpose of material creation, right? So in that way we can present that Shrirata Shai Vishnu is Paramatma. If that is it, if there's a one-to-one equality, then that can be one point. But again, people can again say that for whom the Paramatma is supreme. So it's difficult to argue with them. That's what.
Yeah. Naturally, it's very difficult to argue with somebody who doesn't want to understand. So here, your question is very good, and I think it's good to have answer of this. So I will actually look into try to get you if there is any. I'll ask somebody who can answer me this. I don't know. Personally, I don't know.
Okay.
My understanding was that because in creation it's everywhere. If you go through the entire creation process, everywhere it is said that super soul is within this material world. I think Prabhupada is also written in the purports.
For us, it's okay, Prabhu.
I get it.
For us, because we accept Acharya's purports, so that is like the Veda for us, but not for others, right?
Correct.
Even literatures like Laghu Bhagavatamrita and Srimad Bhagavatamrita, not everyone will accept that.
Accept it. Absolutely. That's true. So I think this ends the discussion over here regarding to the Bhagavan feature. He explains the three features, like from physical objects he proved the existence of the soul, from the existence of the soul, because the physical object in order to act needs an agent, and that agent is a soul. And for the super soul he gives that because the karma of the super soul has to be that the super soul, in order for the super soul to act, they need an instigator. And because karma is inert, the super soul is the one who is making these things happen. So that super soul, he is actually controlling the activities of the soul based on his past karma. And people other people, he uses the other people to give them the results of their action. And then Jiva Goswami is saying that super soul cannot be 100% within this material world, because if he is within the material world and is trying to control everything, then he himself will be controlled by that. So part or aspect of him has to be outside this material world. And that aspect of the super soul who is outside the material world is the Bhagwan himself, Lord Shri Krishna. Now, who is the Bhagwan? He is not trying to prove it away. He is saying the aspect of him has to be there to actually control the living entities or give the results of the living entities within this material. So this is the argument presented by Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, whenever you get chance, please listen to this, so you will better understand. I try to give some rendition of whatever Prabhu has presented here. However, you will understand much better when you hear these classes by Radhika and Prabhu. So, coming back to our discussion, I will skip the purport of this, because when you read the purport, you will understand what we have discussed so far and the exact things Srila Prabhupada will be trying to give in this purport. Now, verse number 36. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada sotevya kripitavyascha saptayo bhagavan nidam. So, O king, O king, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. So, Sukadeva Goswami is concluding this verse or this discussion with the word tasmat. Tasmat, therefore. So, why he is saying therefore? Because he has already given the details that about the sadhana bhakti, is discussed about the presence of the Supreme Lord and how to see or how to perceive. So when you understand about the Supreme Lord, then you practice sadhana bhakti. It is very essential for anybody who is trying to advance through this process of sadhana bhakti. It is very essential for them to practice the hearing. One must do the hearing and glorify and remember the Lord. And how to do this? They can do it always and everywhere. So, sarvada means at all times. Sarvatra means at all places without any restrictions. And sarvatman with all one's mind, intelligence, and body and soul. Basically, with full absorption of thoughts. And then with full faith, they should do what? One should sotavya. Sotavya means hear about. And kirtitavyascha is glorify, and smartavya, and remember whom? The Supreme Personality of God, Bhagavan. He has to glorify, he has to hear about, and he has to remember the Supreme Personality of God all the time. Why? Because these are the limbs of sadhana, and which is already established as the topmost process. So you have to follow the limbs, that is hearing, glorifying, and remember. These are the three most important limbs of sadhana. So Prabhupada talks about how to practice bhakti yoga, and then I'll skip some of the part and I'll go to the important side. Prabhupada is trying to say that, but out of all the 9 different methods, there are Navada Bhakti. We talk about Navada Bhakti, right? 9 different processes. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So, out of all this, excuse me, the first one, namely the hearing, is the most important function in the process of bhakti. Without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any methods of practice. So, hearing is so important. Shravanam is the first method. And it's not like there are 9 steps. You have to go through all the 9 steps. You can become perfected by just 1 step. In Ashtanga Yoga, you have to go through all the steps. However, in Bhakti Yoga, it's not like that. Just by 1 step, you perfect 1 step, and you can go back home, back to bed. And for hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by authorized persons like Vyasdev, who is the powerful incarnations of the God. And since it has been ascertained that the Lord is the super soul of everything, he should therefore be heard and glorified everywhere and anywhere. That is a special duty of the human. There is no other duty. Prabhupada is trying to explain us over here. It is the main duty, the process of hearing, following the process of Navada Bhakti, starting with hearing. And when we sufficiently hear, then we can remember as well as it can glorify. So then he gives all the example, and then the final verse he is talking about that what do one gain when they follow this process. What is the process? The process is explained in this 34 sixth verse. Hari sarvatra sarvada srotavya kirtitavya. So, smartavya bhagavan nina. So when one follow this process, what is the benefit? What is the two benefits of sadhana bhakti? So that is this verse. This is verse number 37. This is a very important verse. If we possible, we try to memorize this verse. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam kathamritam shravanaputeshu samritam punanti te vishaya vidusitasitam swayam vajanti tacharna saroruhantikam. So, meaning is that pibanti ye means those who drink. Those who drink what? What do they drink? Kathamritam. The Kathamritam means they drink the sweet nectarian pastimes of Krishna, and Bhagavata Atmana Sata, of the Lord, Kathamritam of the Lord, as well as of the devotees. They hear the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. And how do they drink? Savana Puteshu Samvrita. Savana Puteshu Samvrita means using the cups of his ears. So using the ears, when they hear about the Lord and his devotees, they hear the beverage of the pastimes of Krishna Katha. So what is the result? When they do that, using their ears, they hear about the Lord and they hear about the pastimes of the devotees of the Lord and their activities. What is the result? The result is, there are two results. One is, so here it is explained there. So one is, they purify the polluted aim of life. So, punanti te vishaya vidu sisasayam. Punanti te vishaya vidu sita. So, the heart in the material world, and we've seen, our experience is that when we are in this material world, our heart is contaminated by all the different kinds of desire. So it is polluted or contaminated by different kind of desires or vishaya. So that heart will become cleansed. And then the second thing that will happen is Vrajanti Tat Charana Saroruhantika. So ultimately or eventually they will attain the lotus feet of the Lord, and then they will go back to Godhead. So they will be able to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, they will get service of the Lord, and then eventually they are going to go back home, back to God. So this beginning from Punanti te Vishaya Vidu Sitasayam. So if we compare this with the discussions which Srila Rupa Goswami has given in Nectar of Devotion, so there are six things that happens when we practice bhakti. I have put the reference over here. It starts with Kleshagni. Kleshagni Subhada Moksha Laguta Krit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Vishesana Sri Krishna Akarshani Chasa. So these are the six benefits of performing bhakti. So the unique characteristics of bhakti are its ability to destroy the suffering. So if you see, Punanti te Vishaya Vidu Sitasayam, this is the Kleshagni part. From Kleshagni to Rajanti Tat Sharana Saroruhanti, which is Kleshagni to Sri Krishna Akarshani. So these are the six things. Sri Krishna Akarshani is the total attraction or ability to attract Krishna. So this is the highest thing. This is the benefit of performing bhakti, and it begins with klesha. These are steps. So when somebody practices bhakti, and the definition of pure bhakti is anya abhilashita sumya. But though the definition begins with Anya Abhila, the devotee who is practicing, sincerely practicing bhakti, they don't have any other desire, they don't have any other abhilasha other than to please Krishna. Though they begin the bhakti, their desire is that, but still, they go through various stages, and then they have this post, the mile post. You can see that, okay, are we making progress? So it begins by klesha. All our polluted or contaminated hearts that will become gradually clean, and then we'll finally have attraction. So these are the first two are the goals of the Kleshagni and Subhadra. It's explaining nectar devotion. When we perform the Bhakti Sadhana Bhakti, these are the first two things that we will realize. Our heart is getting cleansed, and gradually we are progressing. So from Kleshagni to Sri Krishna Akarshani, this is the meaning of these two statements. From the lowest point to the highest point, the person who is hearing Bhagavatam, they are going to experience this. So this is a very important verse. It gives us the importance of the process of hearing. Those who drink through the oral reception, fully filled with the nectareous message of the Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of the life known as material enjoyment, and thus turn back to Godhead, the lotus feet of Him, the personality of God. Excuse me. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is ignorance. Because of ignorance, we come into this, the layer of false ego is given, and then this basically we are covered, and we want to lord over the material nature in this material world. And by the illusory the nature of this, the Maya, the Shakti of Maya Devi, we are trapped. And we want to enjoy. So basically we are going into the cycle of enjoyment and suffering, and so this is the cause of our suffering. So then, how to rid of the clutches of suffering? So Prabhupada is saying the highest way to do is suggested here by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and that is the process of hearing Srimad. When we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and in Bhagavatam we see that it is the katha of Krishna as well as his devotee, starting with Parikshit Maharaj himself. So when we hear about Krishna Katha as well as the devotee's Katha, then gradually what happens? Our heart gets clean. Our heart gets clean, and we get attraction for Krishna, and then the desire to lord over the material nature will gradually subside. So Prabhupada says, for the men in the age of Kali, when they have lost the perfect vision of life, this Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight by which to see the real path. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada has commented on Kathamritam mentioned in this verse, and has indicated Srimad Bhagavatam to be the nectarian message of the personality of God. By sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, what happens? The qualitative of life, mainly lording it over the matter, will subside. And the people in general, in all parts of the world, will be able to live peaceful life, full of knowledge and peace. Here, Prabhupada explaining the discussion Srimad Bhagavatam with his devotees. This is the thing that has to go on, continuously. And what is the result of constant hearing? So here, result of constant hearing of the message of Bhagavad Gita and later Srimad Bhagavatam, one is assured here by Srila Sukadeva Goswami that he will reach to the personality of Godhead and render him transcendental level service in the spiritual planet, namely Goloka Vrindavan, which resembles a huge lotus flower. The conclusion is, thus by the process of Bhakti Yoga, directly accepted as suggested in this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of the Lord, material contamination is directly eliminated without one's attempting to contemplate on the impersonal Virat conception of the Lord. And by practicing of Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo-devotee. For such an impostor, there is no remedy for being freed from the material. So if we sincerely and with clean heart try to perform bhakti, process of bhakti begins by the process of healing. Then gradual purification is going to happen. It's must. This is declared by Srila Prabhupada. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam titled The Lord. So thank you so much, and I am very sorry that we have crossed our time, 15 minutes beyond our normal time. Any discussion, any thoughts, any questions? Not, we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Grantara Srimad
Thank you.
Bhagavati ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Sukadeva Goswami ki jai, Maharaj Parikshit ki jai, Gaur Premanande
Jai.
Hari Bol. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.